Hi, and welcome to Religion in America. I'm Dr. Bourne. I'll be leading you this semester, and I wanted to start off this session talking a little bit about like religious demographics in the United States. So it's important for us to understand the religious landscape, the contemporary religious landscape, as we're situated now. So in our country, but then also when we go back and look at history, we can say, okay, this is where we are now. How did we get here? And so it gives us a little bit of context. So when we go back and we look at the origins of religion in the United States, where in America, it wasn't even the United States then, in the American colonies and even before then. So so a really important site for us for this class, so looking at religious demographics, is the Pew Research Center, and Religion and Public Life. And so if you ever some fascinating articles and things out here. So this is, again, this is the field of religious studies and sociology of religion. And this is stat-based. We're not assessing truth claims. We're not saying, you know, this version of Christianity is better than this version of Christianity. But what we're doing is we're going to look at some trends in demographics in the United States over time. And that will go back later on this semester. We'll kind of try to understand these trends. But if you ever have any interest in going out and finding some incredibly fascinating articles, you have to pewforum.org up here. It'll take you to this page right here, and you can find a whole host of articles. We're going to look at a couple of these, but Americans' View on Trump, Religion and Politics. We're going to talk about that a little bit later in the semester. It really just fascinating assessments on religion, statistical-based assessments on religion. So again, not judging truth claims, things like that. But we are going to look at this, like the decline of Christianity continues at a rapid pace. We're going to look at that. But before that, let's go ahead and take a snapshot. And so this is the religious landscape study that was done by Pew. And so they surveyed 35,000 people. So this is supposed to be a representative sample. Obviously, in the United States, we're not allowed to ask about religion on census data, unlike Canada and some other countries. And so they get some incredibly potent data from their census, where they're able to look at religious belief. But in the United States, we're not allowed to ask about religious affiliation on census data. And so there's other ways that have to be privately funded. Ways. And so the Pew Research Center, they do this, the RLS surveys, religious landscape study, surveys more than 35,000 Americans from 50 states about their religious affiliations, beliefs and practices, and social and political views. And so there's a data set that you can really dive down, but this is presenting the summary. And I think, and you're reading the executive summary of this. You can read the full 200-page report, but I want to highlight a couple things. So this is the most recent one, 2015. I think some of the updates we're going to look at here were actually in 2019. So 2017, I think, is what this data is from. So we'll dive in. So anyway, so right now you have it. So this is when they do a survey, they're calling people up and they're asking them, with which religion do you identify? And they'll list a few religions. And they'll ask some follow-up questions. But people do not respond saying that they're evangelical Protestant. They might say, I'm part of a non-denominational church, or I'm part of the Southern Baptist Convention, or for mainline Protestants, it's like, oh, I'm Presbyterian. And so really these sociologists and demographers have come up with these large buckets to put the evangelical Protestants and mainline Protestants. And it's important for us to understand the differences between these. The mainline Protestants tend to be, and I think I mentioned this in one of the other recordings, tend to be your Presbyterians, Methodists, Lutherans, and they're really mainline, and they're relatively similar to one another. The evangelical Protestants, essentially, there's going to be like a need to have a born again moment. They tend to be more non-denominational and not have like a clear structure, unlike a Lutheran church that has synods and like a hierarchy or an executive body that controls the organization. Other characteristics of the evangelical Protestants tend to have born again experiences. They tend to be biblically literalists, which means like that everything in the Bible is true, inerrant, and to read the Bible literally. Um, and there's some other things, but really just focusing on the religious aspect of it. And the historically black Protestant, the historical black churches tend to be a category on their own, and this is due to their influence on their surrounding culture. And so demographers and sociologists in the past have had them as a category by themselves because they are unique. They're unique entities in the way that they have an influence on their church members, and they tend to not just function as churches, but also as social hubs, social networks, and they wield a little bit more power in their communities than say your typical mainline Protestant church. Catholics, again, it was like Roman Catholics, so Mormons, Orthodox Christian, other Christian. It's if they don't fall neatly into one of these larger categories, and we'll dive a little bit more into these categories as we move along throughout the semester and throughout the online session. And then your non-Christian faiths, Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, and then I talk a little bit about here with these other faith traditions. So we're going to dive in a little bit. So this is really important. So when we look at trends in the United States, the self-identified Christians have been declining. They're roughly about 76% about 15 to 20 years ago, and now down to about 70%. And this unaffiliated group, or religious nuns, not like nuns like Catholic nuns with habits and things like that, but like the religious nuns, N-O-N-E-S. And essentially, like these are people who, when the survey pollster calls and says, are you, do you identify with this religion, or none of the above? These are the people who are saying, like, I don't affiliate with any one particular religion. What's really important for us to know is that this does not mean that they're atheist. It does not mean that they're agnostic. They just don't affiliate with any one particular religious tradition. In our field, there's a group of people who define themselves as spiritual but not religious. They would fall into this unaffiliated category. And so what happens is when we crack this nut open, so I'm going to click on that, and we're going to crack this. It'll have the states, the unaffiliated by states, and some interesting things. So you have like your age distribution among the unaffiliated. They tend to be younger, younger cohort, and you can see the trends. The really neat thing, you can click on the chart, click on the trends, or you can click on the table. So 2014, 2007. The trends and the age and the distribution of these. So we have the age distribution, generational cohorts. You also have a gender composition among the unaffiliated. Men tend to be self-report unaffiliated more than women. Racial and ethnicity, immigrant status, income distribution, the kind of like even across the board. Educational, which is really, this is really interesting. Is like a high school or less tend to be unaffiliated more than some college and postgraduate degree. And so that's a really interesting trend there. Marital status, but what I want to get to is some of the beliefs. Here we go. So this is the unaffiliated group. So this is a group that says that they're none of the above. However, if we look down here, that we have 49% believe in God absolutely or certainly, believe in God that fairly certain. So half of this group, this unaffiliated, have a certain or a fairly certain or a certain belief that God exists. And so again, these are not atheists. Now you do have some that are atheists. Well, I wouldn't necessarily that do not believe in God, because some of these people here are spiritual. They'll call themselves spiritual but not religious. So they'll believe in a presence and a transcendent, but not like in the Christian notion of God. So, but you also have, but this is what's interesting. And so for this group, it's like, because they're unaffiliated, it's like it's just really just me. This is a salience question. Okay, so this question is for the importance of religion in one's life among the unaffiliated, and so it's measuring the salience. How important is religion to you in your life, and how you make your decisions? And that's probably why that they like this group is unaffiliated, is because if you have 65% of this group, religion is not very important to them. And so probably not members of a church. We probably don't, we can actually look at attendance down here. So we have some attendance down here, seldom, never, but some at this, like a quarter of these still go once or twice a month or a few times a year. So again, these are not irreligious people. We do have a separate group categorization for atheists. But prayer, again, you have almost a third of them pray weekly or at least daily. So this group of unaffiliated, they're half of them they're praying, and many of them are going to church. It's just a matter of like, this religion is not that important to them as they make their decisions. But it does not mean that they are atheists. Okay, they're just not affiliated with any one religious tradition. So now you do have, only 3%. So only 3% of people in the United States self-report as atheists. And my argument is that if we crack this nut open, and we scroll down, my suspicion is like that you even have some atheists that might pray, some atheists that might still go to church, some atheists that if we go down here, so belief in God. So I mean, if some atheists are absolutely certain that 2% of these atheist group still believe in God, it's like, well, then how are you an atheist? So and religion is still, for 5% of these people, religion is still somewhat important to them. 10% go to church once or twice a month, or a few times a year. And so you wonder, is like, this is where you get the atheists. So frequency of prayer. So they're not praying necessarily, but they're going to church and they might believe in God. So you might have some misunderstanding among this atheist group of like, what is it that makes you an atheist? And so they're self-reporting something they might not fully understand, or their atheism is more of a rejection of something rather than a sophisticated belief system, where there is no God. So but we can look here over time. And so you might see something on news like, religion's in decline, religion's in decline. It's not necessarily that the belief is in decline. You do have a decline of Christianity, but you don't necessarily have a decline in belief of God. Okay, that 3% of atheists has remained relatively steady over the last 20 years, 30 years even. So you still have, between 92 and 94, depending upon the survey, % of people in the United States do believe in God or a higher power. So it's not necessarily like you have like this massive atheistic push, but you do have a decline of Christianity. And so they found this in 2019, this rapid decline of Christianity. And so you have, essentially, if they're leaving Christianity, chances are they're moving into this religiously unaffiliated category. And so it's, you can see this trend, percent of US adults who self-identify. Okay, this is self-identifying. This is different from what you're doing in the religious congregation membership survey, where you're looking at members of congregations. This is actually just self-identification of the religion. So you'll see Christianity on the decline here, and it's actually being picked up in this religious unaffiliated. And so it's not as if people are going from Christians to becoming Hindus or to becoming Buddhists, but they're actually leaving and moving into this group of the religiously unaffiliated. And there's other survey data where we can actually track the movement of individuals from one group to another and do some more predictive analysis into the future. But and you see like the number of Protestants has declined, going from 51% down to 47%. And this is the A-grade Pew Research Center political surveys. And so even some of their other surveys still ask about religion. So even if this was 2014, their political surveys also ask about religion. And the number of Catholics has not had as much of a decline, and it's been relatively steady as the number of the population, % of the population, and that's because a lot of immigrants coming into the United States tend to be Catholic. And so what you have with Catholicism in the United States is it's becoming more Hispanic, and so your Caucasian Catholics may be declining, but you're having a rise, almost at a replacement rate of some Hispanic Catholics in the United States. But you'll see this nothing in particular rise up here, and then the agnostics and the atheists. And you can see this. I mean, this is a, I mean, from 2007 up to 2018, 2019, you're not having like this huge push, huge rise in the number of atheists or agnostics. So the difference between atheists and agnostics: atheists do not believe in God or any kind of divine power. Agnostics are unsure. Like you can't know one way or the other. But yeah, it's a relatively steady. So what you're seeing here is like, I mean, this decline here these people have to be picked up somewhere, and they're typically being picked up in this category and this nothing in particular category. They're not necessarily switching to another major world religion. So that's the overview. I think it's really, really important for us to understand religion in America, because this has consequences for politics. This has consequences for cultural issues, social issues. For example, I think later in this semester, we'll talk about the chart of the acceptance of gay marriage in the United States for the last 20 years. And that movement like skyrockets. It goes of the acceptance rate, and almost goes like that from around like 1998 up to today, of people accepting gay marriage. So it's a really interesting thing, and religion plays into that. And so it's really important for us to understand the role that religion plays in our society, and how it can't be just extrapolated out on its own. You can't take a scalpel and cut religion out. So it impacts things we do every day. It impacts buying decisions. It impacts where we go. It impacts who you marry, date, how you raise children, maybe who you vote for. I mean, it has a huge impact on American life. And so it's crucial for us to understand the landscape right now, but then also go back in history and say, okay, how did we get here? Which we'll be doing this semester. So with that, that's my little introduction to the religious demographics for this week. If you have any questions or have any insights, post them out on the discussion board. And I look forward to talking with you more about this. With that, have a great day.